This is the Milk and Cornbread Podcast, Episode 4, Milk and Cornbread Solve the World's Problems.
Did you watch the third one yet?
Yeah.
I haven't even had a chance. I haven't been home long enough to watch it.
I listened to it.
Yeah.
I listened to
good?
it on. Oh man, this is the best one. I mean, it's funny because and this is what happened when me and Scotty and Chris did this years ago, is that each one got better.
Yeah.
And you start figuring stuff out and you start the conversations, but it's funny the movie one was unbelievable.
Was it?
Yeah. So we're good to go. All right. What I was saying is that movie one was great, and for folks who are folk who are listening, number 3 is the last one that we turned in, and it was all about our top 5 movies, and it was fun. It was fun to listen to.
It was fun to do.
The whole I was sure that Jordan's would have been different than what he said, and I was shocked. Mine and yours I was shocked about.
I was.
You were shocked about one of mine.
I was, and it wasn't because I thought it was. I love the movie, but it's one that I haven't bounced around in my brain. And when you said it, I was like,
yeah that came up. Then you said that, and you said the same thing. I thought it was pretty funny.
That one was pretty good.
What's been going on since last week when we met? And anything good?
I mean, are we 6 feet apart? I'm just making sure.
We're pretty close.
Yeah. It's just the same. You're starting to see things sort of open back up. But I was in Georgia last week, and they say they're open. They're not open. They opened up this last Wednesday. I started calling restaurants on the way down there. We were looking for a place to stay. C. Graves and I were going down. And we're open May 6th. May 6th.
Which is,
was
2
Wednesday.
days, yeah.
And what was funny was I asked them, every time they'd say it, I asked them why, and they'd say, well, that's just our own thing. What are the chances that the 5 restaurants that I called were all May 6th, and it was all their own thing? I was like, no, I don't think so. But what I hate to say that I'm liking it, but I am. I'd be lying if I didn't, is like what's happening in Michigan and some of these other places. Now, I'm not advocating for people necessarily to go storm a Capitol armed or anything like that, but as long as they're lawfully carrying that weapon, and it's going to take this kind of stuff to get these governors to back off. But we'll see.
It's to me, and I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of COVID, but we can. I mean, we'll talk about.
No,
but one of the things that I think is evident more now than ever is the division. It's tribal. Everything is tribal now, and you're on one, and I'm not. I'm struggling with this because I have certain political views that I've had for a long time, and I don't agree with either side.
I agree for that.
But every response right now seems to be based on what party you are. The responses by the states, by who's doing what on this COVID stuff, seems to be totally based on.
Well, yeah, because the margins of both ends don't want people like it's on this us, and they don't want people like us trying to. And it doesn't mean, don't mistake. I don't want anybody to mistake being a fence rider, or some sort of centrist. It's not about that. It's. I mean, I don't have a problem taking a position, but to me. I assume people, if anybody watches this, that they'll figure out at least that I'm primarily a conservative guy, but part of being conservative is what a lot of people that are right-wingers would consider being a little liberal today, because there are certain things that you and I agree on that conservatives generally believe. If you really are conservative, I don't want to keep getting into these words, but they're liberal by some people's standards, but I just think freedom means freedom. So
I think and the problem is you get this. There's a chance that because you say that, and you and I don't care. I could care less if somebody cancels us or says that we're not part of a group because we say this.
We're not saying anything.
But you have that's part of the problem right now is that if you say that, well, I thought you were a Republican or I thought you were a Democrat, and how could you speak to that when you're supposed to follow this party line? You're supposed to follow this, and that to me that's why we're not going to advance, is because we've got too much of this and this.
Well, and without taking up too much time on it, I mean, we got as much time, I guess, as we need. But I'll tell you a story that just I'll make it quick that illustrates that. So, I mean, I'm not going to name any names or anything like that, but in the past, I was having a conversation with somebody, private conversation at church when we were doing some stuff in the back, accounting sort of things, and we started talking about our beliefs and what conservatism really means, because the guy that I talked to, I think the world of, and he's a smart guy and he's fun to talk to, and he had his position, and my position was, and what we talked about, the topic was the old porn shop that used to be on the top side of Broad, that used to be there, called the Wheel, I think it was called. Well, when all the stuff with Nashville started happening, they pretty much they got canceled, lease, whatever. They moved him out of there against his will. And so we got to talking about it, and I said, look, I mean, if I'm going to believe what I say I believe, then if that guy was conforming to the laws, the zoning, he was on time with his payments, whatever it is, I don't see how you have the right to move him. Now, I'm not advocating for porn shops in the downtown area. I'm not. But what I am saying is that's what freedom looks like. You have to be able to accept that. Well, one of the leaders of the church apparently was standing outside the room listening, and then I got accosted of, how a Christian person who believes in God, which I do, could take a stance as a pro-porn.
so you got labeled.
You either have to be this or you have to be this,
and
that's not the world that I live in. It's not the world you live in, and we don't raise our kids in that world either.
No. And I'll tell you one I've struggled with. In the past week is the whole idea of choice. So,
you.
Whether you're a pro-choice or pro-life or whatever it is, but there is one distinct party that is pro-choice. But like I said, everything's split up right now, and everything that goes right now, everything that's happening right now, that side is supporting.
They're not
right
for
or
choice.
wrong. It's not for choice.
No, they're not for choice at all.
It's the exact opposite of.
That's right.
It's just like.
That's right.
And that's why I keep saying over and over again that to me, it's like Bizarro World.
It
like
is.
Superman Bizarro World or Seinfeld Bizarro
But
World.
the person that was running on that stage, who you and I, we just smile when we hear her name. But the one person who I believe, if she would ever come on the show, it would make my
We'll
year.
get it. We could try.
But Tulsi Gabbard, she would say the same thing you just said, that you can't be for choice. Yeah. Here, I don't know. Maybe she's for all this.
Is it a cake and eat it too type thing?
Well, yeah, but no. What it is these people they don't have any root philosophy. They don't have any world. You know what I mean? It's not founded in anything. It's just and it's no different than this thing with Biden right now. I have no earthly idea of what that woman says is true, and I wouldn't begin to say he deserves the presumption of innocence, just like the Kavanaugh thing. Oh, but that's not happening.
Double standard.
It is just so glaring, and nobody seems to say anything. And so you can't say anything and point out the fact that there is a huge double standard without being labeled as, I'm going to dismiss you because you're a right winger.
Right.
I'm no right winger.
And that's exactly what I want to say too. Is I want people to understand. And I really don't care, to be honest with you, but between us. This, and everybody, the people I run around with, that I'm an equal opportunity party hater.
Oh, no question.
I think that both sides have got some faults.
Nauseating.
Yeah, it is.
What's going on right now with the fact that we're beholden to China, and that all this is going to happen, and all the yammering, and we're going to go back to being exactly where we were to start with, even though this has exposed some major flaws. Both parties are to blame for that.
Yeah,
no
doubt.
Yeah, that is not a Democrat, or the Democrats and the Republicans and the presidents that have been here the last 3-4 terms or more. That's who's responsible for this.
Yeah.
And so they all, nobody wants to own anything.
No.
So that's the reality.
So one of the things that we want to do when we get together is discuss. if we sat in the driveway, we would be hitting all over things. And so what we have to do is we get together here, and because it's a little more structured, we have things that we want to talk about specifically. Otherwise, we'd be sitting out. We sat in the driveway for hours and hit all these points. But today's episode is us solving problems, not talking about the problems that we hate and we.
That's easy to do.
That's easy to do. That's what everybody does. But we're going to come up with some valid, well, I say valid,
what we think.
ideas that may help solve the world's problems. Interesting. I don't know if you saw it, but Milk and Cornbread for America is live. It is milkandcornbreadforamerica.com is live. It's nothing fancy, but it has everything you need on there. We've got a bunch of platforms on the podcast world, and we have YouTube where people are watching. And it's interesting. People are watching and listening.
Really?
I've had people comment to me. I've had people. One of our mutual friends called yesterday and said, "Man, I saw that. I didn't know what in the world it was at first."
Yeah.
And he said, then I listened, and he's like, "It was fantastic."
Well,
And he said, "This is what he said. He said, you guys are sitting around saying what all of us are." And you just had the gumption to record it.
We said that in the first episode, and when we start referring to some of these other episodes, they might run together. But we had said something along the lines of, that was one of our that was one of my, certainly, and yours is you're not alone.
Yeah,
that's one of my, because you are not. I know that there are people that are saying and feeling exactly the same way. Now, I think people have different opinions on how to handle it and fix it.
Yeah.
But I think that most everybody. I think there's a lot of people who feel like that this is just absurd at this point. But anyway, like I said, I don't want to.
Well, in the future, we're going to continue doing this every week. We're staying ahead of it, so every Thursday it comes out on all the platforms, and we're going to keep going with it. And our hope is in the near future, in the next couple of weeks, that we'll actually have a guest that we can interview, because I think it'd be cool to have somebody in here that we don't know. Maybe
absolutely.
It'd be.
They don't know us.
Well, it'd be good to have somebody we know too, but somebody
sure.
we don't know that we can have a conversation about specific topics.
And there's nothing better than fresh debate, because we can look at some of these topics and maybe think about it a little bit, but if we bring in somebody that none of us know, that it'd be a credit to them for walking in here, somebody's home, but.
We can also Skype too, so anybody they can tweet us or email us.
We have a couple good ideas though.
Oh yeah,
that was great. That would be.
All right, so problem number one that I think we wanted to address first, and we've got several. If we have time, we'll hit all of them. But problem number one for me is one of the banes of my existence. I hate it with a passion, and we live in a small town, just a short, wet trip away from a big town, which is Nashville. And for me, when I have to drive from our town to Nashville in the morning, I want to explode almost every day. And I say to myself, why would anybody do this? Why would anybody do this? So my problem number one that we need to discuss, think about a solution, is traffic.
Well, I left Atlanta because there were really two main reasons, but one of them was that I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand the amount of people in the traffic. And we went from all those people to living out in the middle of nowhere, until we moved back to town recently, but because of traffic. And, it's the solution. There's probably multiple solutions, and I see different places doing it. For example, Orlando, when I was down there around I was down there for New Year's. They're starting to double deck. Okay, so they've got
the highway.
They're going up with it, which in most cities that's going to be. You're going to. LA has it. It's going to have to be a solution. As much as it's the eyesore, whatever their reasoning is, and then of course the construction part of it. But the one thing that I don't understand is, Atlanta. We can look at Atlanta and Nashville because those are the two most recent places I've been. But Atlanta, of course, has the outer loop 285. Well, they have the mechanism. They have the roadway there. They would have to buy up some easements and so forth. But they could make Georgia Highway 20 an even outer loop farther than that. And I think that's where I think that's a solution to.
Like 840 for national.
Yeah, but see, the thing is, I mean, I think that they took 840 a little too far.
Too far out.
They did, and instead of just going right through there, but I don't see a lot of people using 840 when I'm on it.
No, it's actually gotten. I remember for the first few years, you could go miles and not see another car. That was before it connected all the way to Dixon and all the way to Lebanon. But yeah, I think it's. Have you noticed the last time I went to Atlanta, the fast pass lanes? It's like a roller coaster lane. Have you seen those where you have to pay extra and you go? I'm not sure that it does anything to solve traffic problem, except for unless you have money, you solve your traffic problem. It's not solving everybody else's traffic problem, but it looks like a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Like I'm looking around, looking at this car, going, wow, just flying through this thing.
It makes it hard to go back and do that stuff now, right? When you talk about using a left lane, but what I would say is if you could make it where it's not a single lane, because then a wreck just if it was 2 lanes. And you had a minimum, I don't even know that you have to charge people.
Yeah.
But a minimum speed limit.
Oh, yeah.
Not a maximum.
Yeah, minimum.
But a minimum speed limit in that lane of 65 to 70 miles an hour. And you could say, you could even increase, because the problem with traffic is you have all these different mindsets and they're all using the same road. And you're never going to get away from that. But the difference in speed is what kills people in traffic. It's not if I'm running 100 miles an hour, and when you've been overseas, we were on the Autobahn, and I'm not saying everybody runs 200 miles on it because they don't.
Yeah, but they're fat.
But what happens is everybody's going roughly the same speed, so everybody's running 80 to 100 miles an hour, and so you don't have somebody running 50 and somebody running 90, and that 40 miles an hour difference at that speed, there's no reaction time, there's no nothing. But you have, and there are minimum speed limits, but they're very rarely posted and they're never enforced. And so, I don't know how you ever change driver education, because it's been my beef. One of my redneck theories, as I call it, is anytime my dad or some people I know start complaining about the politicians, I say, all right, the people that you were around today when you drove in and out of Nashville are also voting when you vote. So when you wonder how some of these people get elected, just look around you at the people you saw in traffic today. And the level of stupidity, one explains the other.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a solution.
No, what is the George Carlin quote where he says, oh man, I'm going to butcher it so bad, but it's something along the lines of, if you're smarter than at the average, I'm going to have to look it up. I'll look it up because I don't want to butcher it.
Yeah.
We'll go back to that in a second. I'll tell you one thing that's cool. Well, you mentioned that some of them go up, and I was listening to Elon Musk one day, and he was talking about we have it all wrong. Of course, he's a different brain.
Go down.
Like he of course, he owns a company that.
It's easier to say than places. Nashville's not the place to do that.
Probably not because of
but
water.
That is a legitimate.
He says it's endless. Because in the air you're limited to height. You're limited to if you use people think you can have airplane cars, but you can't because of the propulsion, the noise, and all that other stuff. So he says you go down, and he says you can stack as
I agree with
far as you want.
When you have limestone and all that stuff, in certain places, I totally agree with that. I think that's a good solution. I think that I'll give you an example. When you go down to Huntsville, the road that goes from 72, I guess, but it goes down and it goes down where that mall is and all. Not the new one on the lake, but the older one. And it goes and it has exits off of it.
Yeah.
And then it winds up when you get out far enough, just becoming like a state highway or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't understand. And it has what they call the Texas turnaround, which my dad says is the best example of engineering in civil engineering history, where the left lane goes and you never have to stop and you can loop around on the frontage roads. I think that frontage roads are a great idea. I just think that having, like in Manchester, having to get off and then turn around and come back.
Oh, it drives me nuts.
And I think that if you would take and raise these roads up, kind of like Murfreesboro did at Highway 41, right there on 96, I think.
Yeah.
That if you would do that, and then have exits off all those instead of all these crossroads. But the lights is what's killing everything because they're rarely in sequence. I mean, there's no reason you should pull at 2:00 in the morning. I've left your house at 2:00 in the morning, and I've sat.
Oh, me too.
I mean, and it's just not. It's not. Now that might be a sensor issue. I'm not going to get into all that, but I'm not an engineer.
But Murfreesboro is the perfect example because that place 10 years ago or less was one of the crappiest places to drive in Tennessee.
It's
if
still
not
a
the
nightmare.
South. It's still a nightmare. But the last time I went down, is it Memorial? Memorial's where all the restaurants and all that stuff are. They started doing they raised the roads up, and that's made a world of difference.
It makes a huge difference.
It's still not great because there's way too many people not enough.
Well, look at a perfect example. Highway 96, Murfreesboro, Tennessee. On a busy day, you get off the exit. You're stopped on the exit because there's a light there, and then as soon as you go, there's a light right at what they call Thompson Lane.
Yes.
That goes up to It's just stupidity.
It just backs up constantly.
It's baffling, why you would, when you put all that in, why you wouldn't remove that light. That light needs to go away. Well, you couldn't get on Thompson Lane if that's the case. So, I just think that lack of, it doesn't matter. Like I said, the problems are the problems. The solutions are what we're talking about. But I think the underground thing is a legitimate idea.
I think that when I start thinking about what you said about the above ground, that makes a lot of sense. I'm thinking stacking and stacking and stacking, which is I think is legitimate. But when you put it as a instead of having intersections, you go over the intersections with the off ramp that you were talking about your dad. That makes so much more sense. I think that is a solution. I think it's a definite solution. The underground is a definite solution. What about What about transportation? Like subways and train. We don't have that. We don't. Did you know there's not an Amtrak that goes through Tennessee? There's not.
That's right.
There's not one. In order for you to pick up an Amtrak, you have to pick up a bus in Memphis.
I do think, okay, so you can't. It
pick up-
doesn't go through Memphis.
No,
but
you pick up a bus over there
Okay.
near the Mississippi, and you take a bus and you get on it somewhere in Mississippi or whatever. But there used to be a train that ran through Tullahoma, that ran from Chattanooga to Nashville.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it would. I don't know if that would.
It absolutely would. Look, people use it. We use it in Atlanta a little bit, but you have to get it. The problem with that is that I'll give you an example. In Atlanta, it didn't go into Gwinnett County. It went through the other counties, but Gwinnett County said, no, we have a different clientele in our county, and we're not going to have rail here because there's a negative stigma against rail, especially in the South. And they say that the stations are in bad places and things like this, and sometimes it's true.
Yeah.
But if you could, I don't know about New York and all that because I've not been there and been on those, but I know a lot of people use those trains. But in spread out areas like this, I do think it would be. But all it does is, Nashville is a good example because the infrastructure's there, and you could run your high speed. You could elevate it, and you could probably put it in without causing too much harm to existing traffic, because you've already got right of way over there. So I do think it would, and I'll tell you what else I firmly believe, and Georgia was going to do this, and then all it ended up being was a political thing, and but they were going to put a high speed that of course hubbed in Atlanta. It was going to go to Macon, Greenville, maybe, South Carolina, and then in Chattanooga.
See. And
so the problem is what it would allow people to do. I could live theoretically on a high speed, okay, and they're in Europe and other places, and I rarely am going to use Europe as an example for anything, but I will say that the Far East and some of those places, they have that figured out.
Yeah, figured out.
And I could live in Macon, Georgia, and have 50 acres that I didn't have to pay but $4,000 an acre for of nice land that I couldn't get for $40,000 an acre here.
Oh yeah.
And for the same amount of time that you could drive to work, I could work in Nashville, and I could commute from Macon to Nashville, and I could be there in an hour and 5 minutes, and I can sit there and I can prep. It'll have Wi-Fi. I can read my paper. I can think. I can read a book. But what ends up happening is the city of Nashville has to be behind something like that, or the city of Chattanooga, or the city of Atlanta. The city of Atlanta didn't want to do it, and they'll tell you all kinds of lies and reasons. The reason was they didn't want people living outside the city of Atlanta. Yeah. They didn't want to encourage people from Chattanooga to be able to come and take a job of somebody in Georgia, but then not have to pay the 4% or 5% state income tax and and then go home to Tennessee. Well, why is that a problem?
Yeah.
If you really, but you want to talk about it. So I do think that mass transit. I don't think busing will ever work.
No.
But as far as rail, I think it's a legitimate thing. But somehow you have to. It doesn't need to have a negative stigma attached to it. So it doesn't need to be something that just runs, traditionally has run into, bad parts of town, and then all of a sudden you want to put a couple good spurs on or something, because then it has that.
I got my hopes up the other day because I read an article where they were talking about doing a passenger train from Tullahoma to Nashville.
Nice.
Reviving because the train runs. That's why this town exists.
So Nashville and Tullahoma.
Right, and so they're talking about reviving that. But I've also heard too that, and I don't know about rail as much as maybe bus and subway, that type of stuff. But they're money hogs, and they never, that public transportation never makes money.
Never.
But I wondered if you privatized it, if it would.
Yes.
And that's my thing.
Yes.
Is that
anytime the word public is involved, it can't make money.
Right. That's exactly what I was thinking.
So yes, it will. And what it'll do is, here's the issue. In my view, the solution. You can't constantly be dictating that every swath of society gets to use everything.
Yeah.
Okay? So if they build a rail that goes from Davidson County and goes to Williamson County and down to, like where my in-laws live, down towards Marshall County, where there's open property out there, and you have a rail that goes from Nashville out through Murfreesboro all the way to Manchester, or even to the foot of the mountain, the people that would be accessing that, you're going to charge a hefty premium to do that. You're not going to be able to ride the train for $1.50 each way, or you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You're going to have it'll be a monthly membership fee. It's called an unlimited usage fee, and it's going to cost you $200 a month, or $250 a month. Well, when you extrapolate your cost every day, but there's going to be a lot of people that can't afford that. So the problem is when they try to do something like that, you're going to get beat over the head because. No, the people that can't afford that, what are they going to do?
Yeah.
Well, what are they doing right now?
Yeah.
Well, they went and bought a $2,000 car. Well, that's what I did.
Yeah.
That's what I drive. So, that's still going to be their solution. But you have a solution, and that's the privatizing part. And everything in this world doesn't have to be inclusive. I hate to say that, but it's just true.
No, it is true.
I'm not included in a lot of things, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with the whole public-private thing, and they're scared to death to let a lot of things that are public go private because, prisons is one example and different things because they're afraid that it might work and then it'll just kind of expose.
That's true. Well, we talked a lot about this transportation more than I thought we would.
Way more than I thought.
That's pretty.
But that's what we talked
about.
I mean, it just sort of.
It was going to happen.
Yeah.
Our producer Colin, he hooked me up on the quote there with George Carlin, but George Carlin says. Before we take a break here, it says, think of how stupid the average person is and realize half of them are stupider than that. That's what it was. George Carlin, you're talking about, he had solutions to problems.
Yes, he did.
But he
a lot of them
made people mad on all sides.
Well, but you know what? I mean, take the other stuff aside, that people didn't watch him because of the language or whatever. The reality of it is, some of his solutions, he might have been a comedian, but he was a brilliant man.
Oh, he's super smart.
And those were legitimate solutions. It might have come through in a but good stuff, man.
Yeah. All right, take a break.
This is Milk from Milk and Cornbread. Just wanted to say thanks for listening. We've had some great conversations from COVID-19, our favorite movies, as well as college football and toilet paper. Stay tuned for some great upcoming shows, one of which could involve the paranormal. We want to hear from you. If you have any topic ideas or want to be a guest, contact us on Twitter at MNC Podcast and our email, milkandcornbreadforamerica@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening.
So great conversation on the transportation, and we could go on. We could probably spend a whole show on transportation.
I'm shocked, too.
But we don't want to bore people to death.
I thought it was
about
a 10-minute conversation.
I did too. It just flew by, and it's funny because I've thought about it many times. Like when I go to Chattanooga, I love Chattanooga, and when
Bottleneck, one of the worst 5 in the country.
It's awful. But downtown is cool because they have the trolley system and stuff like that, and I know it probably doesn't make any money and it's probably a pain, but it does seem like it's not as congested downtown as it used to be. But
Well, what can their cost possibly be?
I don't know, but to me, I thought about it here. I thought here in our little town, how cool would it be to have a trolley or an electric bus or something that ran from
Jack Daniels and
just in a circle.
Yeah.
Just and stopped at like Walmart in that area. Then it stopped at Northgate Mall, and it stopped at Trinity Lutheran. Just had different spots around where it stopped. I think even in the small towns it would be better. Cookville has them. Cookville has the buses, the shuttles.
That's where they say we're going backward now, but that's where the public-private stuff can work.
Yeah.
Where you get but that's a good idea. That's actually a good idea.
So we need to get the mayor on that one. See if we can figure out.
Yeah.
So second problem number 2 is a little deep. It's going to be deeper than traffic. This is something that you're big on, and I'm kind of learning because of some of the stuff that we've talked about and shared. But the problem is for me is economy, but even deeper would be we could look at taxes, or even to me, one of our favorite politicians talks about, she's a supporter, and I'm not necessarily a supporter of that, but universal basic income. So I think there's a lot of different things that we can look at there, but to me, what is that area that we should talk? What are some problems that we could solve in the economy?
Well,
some glaring problems.
I think that your first problem is always going to be taxation. That's, to me, is the primary, and it's because of, and it's not just income taxes. That's not all I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fact that on a $50 hotel room, I had to pay $15 in taxes. That's a 30% tax.
That's huge.
I'm talking about renting a car in Dallas, Texas at the airport, and they tell you that to double your rate for the tax. So if you get a $40 rate quote, it's going to cost you $80. That's 100%.
That's nuts.
I'm talking about Gulf Shores, Alabama, when I rent a condo, and they tell you that $500 a night, you have to double that for taxes and fees. That's what I'm talking about. It's not just income taxes.
What kind of condo are you staying in?
I'm just saying, it's they tell you these things, and I say, and this was my response as an idiot. Why don't you just tell me it's $1,000 a night?
Yeah.
Or if it's $200, it's $400. Why don't you just tell me that? Well, do you think I'm stupid enough that you can buy me? It does. I'm not going to go. It's just taxes, hidden taxes, which we talked about. The reason that liquor stores are open right now and nothing else in it, or was it's all taxes. They've got to get so much money because they spend so much money. But the main driver of it is income taxes, and then I guess secondarily would be all the other state taxes that just wear you thin.
I'll tell you my experience before we come up with our solutions on this. But when I was in college, I worked at an antique mall, and which is pretty interesting in itself.
Sure.
But in that antique mall, there were things in there that were very expensive. There were things that were very cheap. But the one thing that was in common on those antiques were that they were sold over and over again. And every single time they were sold, even if it was in that same store, sold over and over again in that same store, every time it was sold, there was a tax on that.
Every time, 9 1/4.
And I was always like, I struggle with that. I still can't wrap my head around it because I am not a business person. I am not an economics person. But when I start thinking about that, I'm like, how many times you got to pay tax on something?
It's not right. It's a used car. And while we're here to talk about solutions, so you remember the John Linder Neil Bortz plan that was the national sales tax. It was a few years back. Linder's out of Congress and Bortz is off the radio now. But anyway, one of the tenets, one of the foundational principles of that is that things get charged tax one time when they're new. So this idea that you're having to buy the antique and pay it, or you buy a car and it sells 20 times in its lifetime and every time it's charged sales tax, that's over with. So, but let me go backward real quick because...
Is that off the table? I mean, is that
it? It will always be off the table as long as you have Republicans and Democrats in state legislatures and in Washington who all they care about is how much money they can suck out of people, and because of all the things that they can then turn around and give away and tell everybody how great they are. So, but the one principle that you would have to agree on, and there are people who don't agree with this, and I accept that people think that what they call the Keynesian, economics, which is the government creates. The government doesn't create growth, but, and I'm not going to go too far into the woods, but the Laffer curve, and we talked about this. Art Laffer is an economist, and back when Reagan was in office, and the marginal rates were skyrocketing again in the late 70s. I want to say was somewhere on the order of 50%, maybe the highest marginal rate. I don't remember what it was, but anyway, Laffer, they have it called the Laffer curve, and what it does is it starts at it's income versus taxation, and basically what the curve proves is that the higher the taxation, income actually goes down. And what happens is people, especially left-leaning people, their answer to everything, and even Republicans, when you go to the city of, it can be a little tiny city of Cornersville, Tennessee, or it can be a city as big as New York City, and when you're either incompetent, you don't have the brain power to be sitting in the chair you're sitting in, or you just have a worldview that everybody should give away everything they have and that they work for, raising taxes is always their knee-jerk reaction. But the fact is, and this has been proven over and over again, raising taxes depresses revenue. Raising taxes doesn't raise income. It doesn't raise revenue. And you have people still fighting that battle, whether it's me and you sitting on a couch, and you may disagree with that, but me and you sitting here, or people in Congress, that there's a country full of people who think that raising taxes actually raises revenue, and the opposite is true. And it's just until you can believe. I mean, the numbers are there. Reagan raised, and I'm not going to sit here and talk about whether he's my favorite president or yours. That's immaterial. The fact is that he doubled revenues. Now that's impossible to do. Think about that.
Yeah.
In his time, he doubled revenues to the federal government, to the federal treasury, and Congress tripled spending. So it's just. And sadly, it does go along. This is one of those things that goes along a lot of times along party lines, because now I'm not a historian, but Woodrow Wilson, I think it was the Revenue Act of 1913, is when it was signed into law. I think.
Pretty good, man.
Okay, well, that's when all this stuff started, right? And so they had an issue with a tax before, and this is when the marginal rates were, I think, finally agreed to or whatever. But that vote had one Republican vote for it, and he was a real progressive guy. So this is nothing new. So for 120 years, 110 years, whatever, or whatever it's been, you still have them, and it is still very much a conservative versus sort of liberal idea of, we should take. I mean, Jimmy Carter believed that everybody in America should make around $30,000 to $35,000, and that anything that came in beyond that should be sent back out. So I don't know what your feelings are.
I mean, that kind of goes along with the line of the UBI too. So you could almost talk about the taxation. I had a question though about taxation before we talk about universal basic income. But like I've always heard, and I'm a taxation money accounting idiot.
Well, you pay them, so you know.
I know a little bit, enough that I pay them, but
right.
but I've always heard that when people talk about like a wheel tax, that's the one that we should be using instead of increasing, because our city has the highest. We have high property taxes, but we also have a high sales tax, and I'm not sure that we do that because we feel like this area produces a lot of people from outside that come in and spend money here. But there's a lot of people in this town, I don't know what the percentage is, but there's a lot who don't pay property taxes.
Right.
And so I've always heard that a wheel tax was, and
Yeah.
I'm not for or against one.
No,
I don't even know.
My issue is you get these catch-alls, and a catch-all is a wheel tax. Okay, so if you're talking about a private wheel tax, generally when you talk about wheel tax, it hits commercial. Okay, because governments realize that you have to have certain things. Okay, and people that are in government realize that. So they know you have to have groceries. They know you have to have these things. And so what they do is, instead of openly raising taxes on groceries, which would probably get them crucified they raise wheel taxes, which all that does is it gives them some plausible deniability. Well, what happens when you raise K&L Trucking Services, who brings I was in Goodlettsville. They have an associated grocer. They have a wholesale grocer. I was out at 11 o'clock the other night, and there was a line of trucks a mile long waiting at probably 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning to get in there. Okay? So when you raise the wheel tax, you raise taxes on all those trucking companies. They turn around and raise the taxes
On everything else.
They raise the price on their deliveries to Walmart and Kroger, and then they end up raising the prices because corporations don't pay taxes. They pass them on to you. And so the issue I have with the wheel tax is that's where they always go to because it gives them enough cover. Because when they raise the wheel tax, they're raising it on, they know that it's going to pass down the line, and it's just there again it becomes it's raising and another thing, and I think we touched on this. This is what I have the most distaste for, because when you look at taxes on supply and demand, right, you get all these different curves. The more you raise price, the da-da-da-da. Well, alcohol and cigarettes, which you would call sin taxes, okay? Yeah. And this kind of goes along the line of what we talked about before when I told you the story about what happened at church.
Yeah.
I guess you could label me as a person, as one thing, even though I'm not, but I don't really care. But the people in government know that cigarettes and alcohol are nearly inelastic, which perfectly inelastic, right, is when price does not change consumption.
It's still going to happen.
Right, exactly. And they start taking
They
food.
can jack it up.
They start taking food off the table. They start taking other things out of their weekly expenses in order to consume the same amount. And that's a perfectly inelastic, right? Well, our government knows that. Yet our government has voted for every sin tax increase in my lifetime. There's never been a sin tax increase that came before for whatever level of government. And so I started looking it up. On a pack of cigarettes in the state of Tennessee, now I might be off by a few cents, but a pack of cigarettes in the state of Tennessee is about $7. $4 of that is tax.
4?
You heard me. And so when you go to New York City and all these places, and a pack of smokes is $12 and $15, they still are only getting about $3 a pack net back to manufacturer or whatever. The rest of that, you've got embedded taxes, but you know what they do? They charge you the whole $7 or the whole $12. They don't charge you. All right, well, it's our cost on these smokes is $3.50. We're operating at 30% margin. That's $1.05, and so whatever, and so we're going to sell these for $4, and then we're going to show you a separate line item for the tax, just like fuel.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
You pay a certain amount. Why is it that? But it's not that way on other products. Well, because they don't want you to know how much they're taxing it.
Yeah.
And so it's this constant game of hiding, and it's just. You can't be honest about taxes when you're people that are making the rules, because you can't look at yourself in the mirror. And so I know some of that gets into the weeds a little bit, but now the national sales tax I think is a legitimate idea.
Is that? I mean, do you think that's that is a solution, or are there other solutions other than that?
Sure.
Or do you think that's first? Do you think that's a first step?
Well, I'll tell you this.
Who would be? We talked about tribes at the beginning of this conversation. Who would that fall into? Because I don't even know.
The Democrats in Congress would never go for it.
Really?
No, they'll never go for that, because it takes away their ability to continue to raise taxes on people that they call wealthy. And so, you also have to start with a worldview of you aren't doing anything and I'm not doing it. The Constitution doesn't set out. The general welfare of the United States is probably one of those terms out of the Constitution that has been used, and you know what I mean, and twisted and turned, because you and I aren't guaranteed anything, and neither is our producer over here, because you have to go make it, and if you choose, or you're in a situation, and look, I'm not happy that there are people that may not I didn't have unlimited choices. You make the best of the situations you've gotten, and you just learn to live and be happy in life with it, because But you don't owe people something because they weren't given a certain chance, or the fact is they're going to be wealthy people, and I'm perfectly okay with that. They create a lot of jobs. They may be offensive people, and most of them I probably wouldn't sit here with on a couch.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have a conversation with, but the fact is they need to exist. And to continue to tax those people, because they don't even pay ordinary income tax. They pay 15% capital gains tax. When you're a billionaire, you're not taking a $100 million salary. You've got investments, so you're paying 15% a year, so they're paying less than a teacher pays.
Yeah, I've heard that. And that to me, that brings up the whole idea of like that flows right into the UBI, because the universal basic income. Because if you paid attention to Bernie and Andrew Yang and Tulsi, all those who were supportive of that UBI, the way that they were going to pay for that was off that. Because the biggest thing is, how do you come up with trillions of dollars to give everybody
It was
$1,000?
some catchphrase they kept saying. They never did explain it.
Well, and I know a little bit about this, but so the concept of universal basic income is that everybody gets a certain amount of money per month, like whether it's $1,000 or $2,000 or whatever it is. And the question is, how do you pay for that? Because you're talking about trillions of dollars and that's a whole nother
Is
conversation.
it a Google tax or something, or an
No,
Apple tax?
well, it's essentially, but it's like it's the high corporations like Amazon, Bezos, who doesn't pay tax. They don't pay those taxes that you're talking about. And so Bernie and Yang and Gabbard were talking about using the capital gains, the taxes. There's some kind of Wall Street tax that they're not paying, and using that to gather the money to pay for everybody's income. I don't know how it works, and
You do know how it works, and I'll tell you why. Because you're living it as we speak. You can't say after come December 31st, there is nobody in this country that can honestly say they're not sure about a UBI, because you have empirical evidence happening every day in the United States of America right now. If you were unemployed, if something happened to you, you're one of the 30 some odd million people. They're saying there's 100 million people out of the workforce right now. I don't know that seems a bit high, but I do know that there's 30 million some people. Let's just call it 30 million. Let's just say that's the number.
yeah,
Right now, okay, they're getting $600 a month from the federal government, and in the state of Tennessee, you get another $328, I think. You're making $928 a week. I said a month. It's a week.
A week?
A week. People who were making $300 and $400 a week are now making $928 a week. This is a true story, and that $600 a month from the federal government is supposed to go out December 31st. You and I both know that in this country, and this goes back to Woodrow Wilson, this goes back to FDR, and even on past that, when a handout is given, and I'm not calling it a handout for some people, because there are legitimately people who I'm glad this unemployment thing was there, because they didn't ask for this problem.
yeah.
The thing is, here's your problem. I talked to a guy, last week, had 14 employees. This is a guy that I know. He paid his employees about $450 a week each. Out of those 14, he had one come back. And the guy said, I just don't feel right knowing that there's a job available and I'm sitting at home, even though I could make twice the money. The other 13 said, have you lost your mind?
They're collecting the money.
I was making $450. The federal government is paying me twice what you were paying me. I'm good right here on my couch. And so what you've done is you've got a UBI right now going out to the tune of $600 a week from the federal government, and then whatever the state unemployment on top of that. They don't have to pay income taxes on the money. That's been deferred. That's been done away with. And so you have people that have never, a lot of people who have, and this is going to be something that could very easily be taken the wrong way, and if it is, then it is. There are people who, if you've been used to making 18 to 20 a year, and all of a sudden, you now are making 2.5 times that, that is not a good thing.
No, because they're not going to go back.
Well, and here's the problem, and you can see it because I personally went to the grocery store, okay? So, your bill right now, if you went 6 months ago, 4 months ago, and you gave me a list of the 10 most common items you buy, and you went today and bought that same 10 items, you're going to be shocked how much more it is today.
Yeah. Oh, we've already seen that uptick.
Massive. Why is that? Well, because you have people who have more money now than they've ever had in their lives.
Yeah.
It's coming from the federal government. That means prices have to go up.
Yeah.
That's part of the deal.
Yeah.
Inflation, you handing out money. And so for, I don't know how many people, that's been my beef with the UBI. The main reason, this is going to sound horrible, but the main reason that I initially started at least looking at it was because one of the ladies espousing it, I just love. And I love to hear her say UBI. So, I mean, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I get it.
But I love to, and I don't agree with her politics and everything, but you're living in so on December 31st, I think for those of you who are unsure about the UBI, look backward 10 months and tell me what you think is good or bad about what you've experienced, and that's going to be your UBI situation. Now, I will say this, in fairness to the people who are for the UBI, they are never advocating for $50,000 a year, which is what the $900, nearly would be.
Yeah,
so,
Yang and all those guys were talking about like $1,000 a month.
Yeah.
Just
so,
not a like, and it was supposed to be basic survival, so that you could pay for your groceries for that month or whatever it is. But the issue that I've seen over and over again, I read an article today by Rand Paul, and Rand Paul was saying that we're giving money away that doesn't even exist.
It's true.
And that's a whole nother
episode.
A whole nother episode.
That's an entire episode.
And that's what we hope. That we hoped we had to have that episode where we have a conversation with the author of one of our books that we share. We're gonna reach out.
Read The Creature from Jekyll Island.
The Creature, yeah, exactly. And we're gonna reach out to that guy. We're gonna get him on here. It's gonna be a long shot, but we're gonna get him on here. I think.
Let me ask you this, because I'm gonna take everything back to where I think it all goes wrong. And then we can talk about solutions like we talked about real quick. I guess maybe to tie it up, but this $1,000 a month you said is the UBI, and that's by and large a Democratic idea right now from that side of the world. Okay.
Yeah. But interestingly enough, the Republicans passed it for this COVID stuff.
They did. And they've got some cover because of it. Anyway, the Bortz Lender plan that I was talking to you about, which was a national sales tax plan, what they had involved in that national sales tax plan was what they called a prebate. And what that was because prices, the cost of things were going to go up in a national sale. First of all, what you got to understand is when the national sales tax, when that passes, the IRS completely goes away. They're gone.
Yeah, I have heard that.
Yeah. And so they don't exist. And so the only way they would exist, it would be a revenue collection mechanism that accounted for the money that was coming in on the national sales tax. That's what it would be.
So you still have state? Still have state sales tax?
Yes. No, but it all needs to go away.
It becomes one tax.
It all becomes one tax, and the state gets their portion. Now, if you want to carve that out, like right now it is, where the county gets a portion of the sales tax, you can do the same things with the state, so they still have the autonomy. But what they did is they did what was called a prebate, and they would send people under the poverty line. I think that their plan was under $22,000, and the poverty line is 12 to 18. So they increased a little bit. They would send those people a check every month. It was a UBI check. It was like $684. They would get every month to pay for the increase in the tax on the things they must have: toothpaste, toilet paper, their medicine, whatever. Although it wouldn't be on medicine, but anyway. Then there would be, and part of this also is there was no taxes on used stuff. It was taxed one time. The antiques, they're taxed when they're new, and that's it.
Cars,
everything.
So you're talking about this was the 80s?
No.
70s?
No. This plan was in the 2000s.
Oh,
look up the Bortz Lender plan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was HR resolution, whatever. John Linder was a smart guy. Neil Bortz was a talk show host.
I remember.
Okay,
that.
They had a plan, and there's 2 books out about it, and I've read them, and the plan is sound. But they always say, well, it's disproportionately affecting the poor. No, it's not, because they get that prebate check. So tell me the difference between their plan with a prebate check and the UBI.
It's semantics.
It's the Democrats didn't come up with it. It was Republican guys, and again, I'm not espousing one way or the other, but it was 2 guys who were both right-leaning guys came up with this idea, and it was labeled as something that was disproportionately racist and affecting the poor, even though the people were getting a check up front every month. And now you've got the UBI, and this is the most
What's
awful
the
thing in
difference?
the world. It was who came up with it. Who's the one out there throwing it around? Well, you can't look. You're on the right, and this goes back to what you said earlier. You can't take credit for helping the poor. That's our deal.
No.
And so,
Well, and then we just by talking about UBI and saying that this might be some, that puts us in a rebellious state where we don't fit in either party. And you know, you're supposed to. I have people close to me that if I said there's some things about the UBI that I understand. There's some things about that I understand. If I said that, you're removed from that tribe that you were once a part of, and I think that's part of the problem right now. Is we can't come up with solutions. We're coming up with ideas, with topics or with solutions to our topics, but the problem is that the people who are making decisions can't make those decisions because they end up being alienated from their tribe.
they won't. They are, and they won't because it takes their hand off the power button.
Right.
Because if you want solution, this is not my idea or your idea. It's been around forever. It just happens to be the most logical, reasonable solution. Is okay. There's no more mortgage deduction. There's no more deduction for having kids. None of this. There's no more deductions of any kind. If you're under $40,000 a year, you pay no taxes. Period. Have a good life. For every dollar you make, okay, at $40,000, if you earn more than that, all right, if you make, call it, $60,000 a year, or say under $30,000, that's probably a better number. So every dime that you make, so you make $60,000 a year, that's $30,000 above the 30, right?
30's tax free.
Right.
And
30,
then 30
first 30 is
tax.
tax free. The next 30, okay, you owe me $6,000. Call it 20%. Let's do an easy math. You owe me $6,000. Period. You write a check for $6,000. You get to keep 24. All right. So you just made $60,000, and you get to keep 54 of it. And you write a check for $6,000 to the federal government, and that's it. And that's the end of it.
What about the person who makes $1 million? Is it the same? Is it the same percentage? Or
Absolutely, it's a flat tax.
It's a flat tax.
Yeah, but you know what? You know what the left says? Oh, that's not fair because they're not paying their fair share. They have to keep getting a marginal rate up to 90% or 50% or whatever. What do you even talk? Every time you ask somebody what's enough, they can never answer it.
Yeah.
But last time I checked, and I know that I'm not a mathematician, but 20% of $1 million is a lot more than 20% of 50,000.
Yeah.
And so that's it. It's the fairest, most reasonable. It accounts for poverty line. It accounts for all these things, and it is absolutely, and it's one form on one page. There's not a 10,000 pages of the IRS code.
Which
it's
makes
one
no
form.
sense to anybody.
No, it makes people. The IRS doesn't even know it.
Yeah.
And so it simplifies life for everybody. Now, the people who want to say, well, the guy that makes $35,000 a year is going to find himself a way to whittle that down to 30. How's he going to whittle it down? There's no deductions.
Yeah.
You're either going to have to have your employer lie,
Yeah.
or you're going to have to knowingly lie.
Yeah.
But it's very simple, and it's a one-page deal. Bam. All right, what'd you make? All right, here's your thing. I made $100,000. 100 minus 30 is 70 times 0.2 is 14. Write a check for $14,000.
It seems pretty simple to me. I don't know.
But that's the thing is, I think maybe in the back of your mind you're thinking that it's too simple. It can't ever work like that. No, it can. But complexity and all that, and all that type stuff is where the government lives.
Yeah.
And all these different arguments. But I can't think of a coherent argument against it. To say that the rich don't pay their fair share, sure they do. And to say that it disproportionately affects the poor, that is absolutely not true.
Yeah.
And so what it does is it brings taxes down, which raises. Look, I know Mick's always wanted.
30 seconds.
Oh, yeah.
Colin's cutting us off.
Okay, I'm just saying that RV you've always wanted.
Yeah. You could pay for it.
Well, I mean, think about it. You know, all right, I made this much this year. I only owe this much in taxes. I'm going to go put some money back in the system.
Well,
that's America, man.
It is America. So the next one we have, they don't want to miss this solution when we come back. So
yes.
We'll talk about this.
And now,
a quick message from two rather unique listeners of the Milk and Cornbread podcast.
Hey, Floyd, what you getting into later on tonight? I got some natural lights. We can go hang out and drink some cold ones.
Oh man, I'll tell you what, I heard about these two boys, Milk and Cornbread, and when I was down at the tannery today, and I'm telling you, I think I'm gonna go home and maybe crack me one and just listen to them two boys. What about you?
Milk and cornbread, that sounds like some kind of something we'd eat tonight.
Well, it might be, I tell you what, but I mean, if my wife don't have milk and cornbread at least 3 nights a week, we're gonna get a square off spot out back.
Let's get us some natural light and listen to milk and cornbread.
Milk and cornbread it is, brother.
All right.
The Milk and Cornbread podcast, available weekly on all podcast platforms.
So good conversation on the economy, deep stuff that I'm sure that Milk and Cornbread will hit again in the near future.
Sure.
I mean, when we have our heavy episodes, I think that we need to have a creature episode. We need to have just a creature episode, and if we can get the author of Creature on here, then that would be.
Which is about the Federal Reserve, by the way.
Right. Yeah. By the way, yeah. So people know what we're talking about. But it's a great book.
All we're gonna say. I'm not getting into it. All we're going to say is the Federal Reserve is a private bank. I'm not going to say anything more than that.
Right.
Read the book. It's just not a government bank.
You know, since you gave me that book, and this is a whole nother conversation, but since you gave me that book, I've asked people that question. I ask them, I say, what do you think of when you think of the Federal Reserve? And what do they always say?
It's federal.
Federal government. Yeah. They don't realize that. So
what's in the name?
Another day. So this was a little more light. This one's a little more our speed that we can.
But not any less irritating.
Not any less irritating. This is definitely a frustrating point of view for all of us. But I want to talk about a problem and a solution, or possible solutions, for officiating in sporting contests. So, in layman's terms, referees. How can we improve that situation? Because I'm going to tell you what I think. Every year, I'm an avid sports fan. I watch football, and you see someone get a first down, or seemingly a first down. They pull the chains out there, and it's this far off, or this far off, or this far off, whatever else. And my thought always goes to, why is there not a dang sensor in there that tells them when they've crossed that line? The other one for me is the pitcher. When they throw the ball and it's in the strike zone, and your strike zone is different than my strike zone.
That one could almost be computerized.
Why in the world is that not computerized?
Robot.
So one of my solutions to this problem that we hadn't even talked about yet, but one of my solutions is I don't understand why we're not using AI or automation for officiating. And I want to bring something up in a little bit about the NBA when we talk about this a little bit before we leave, about how they are kind of doing that. But I want to get your thought on that too, on officiating and some solutions, because I understand that there are good officials.
Sure.
There are people who work hard, they do a good job, and I'm not dogging officials, but there are some crappy ones.
Horrible.
And there are some ways that we can improve it.
Shrimp night.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Sorry, inside joke. Yeah. But what do you think?
Well, with respect to the AI part, I might take a little different position. I think that it's ruining the NBA. I think bang calls are just that in the NBA. There are probably times on a tip ball going out of bounds late in the game where it might be okay to get the right. I don't think that the TV should be involved. It gives teams extra timeout.
It changes the momentum.
It changes everything. And you're talking about giving the best coaches and the best players in the world time to dial something up when ordinarily they wouldn't have that. So it takes away from the game. I think in any sport, I think if in all the sports, I think football is really the one, because you have time in between every play. I understand it isn't the time for the guy to go get under but you still have time in between every play. I don't think that it changes the momentum of a football game nearly as much, and I do think that you need to be selective on which sports and that would be that it goes. And I think football, really, to what I've seen, you could maybe argue baseball a little bit, but I do think that
I think they're trying to speed up baseball.
well, they probably are, and I have no problem with that. But I do think there's a certain romance in it's sort of the what I would call you could call it the romance of the game, or the where a good buddy of ours who's a big baseball guy that's coached it for more years than I've been alive. He can tell you give him a name, and he can tell you his strike zone.
Yeah.
I think that's cool.
Yeah.
I don't know that I want to get away from that. I understand everybody wanting it right and wrong, but there's a level of I hate to use this word because I don't know if it's a real word, but it's kind of coolness or whatever as a major league player, whether you're a pitcher or a batter, and you're in the locker room before the game, just like we as coaches have gotten our referee assignments before the game, and we're going, oh no,
It's over,
or something like this.
Yeah.
And there's a certain level of romance and sort of, hey, you're at the highest level here, to where, and it doesn't matter. I mean, you got high school and middle school umpires who have different zones. It makes you adjust. It makes you a player to play the game. So I would only agree that the AI stuff should be being used in football. I don't know that I agree. I can't stand it being a part of basketball. I don't really have an opinion on baseball because I just don't know enough about the inner workings of the sports to know how it affects it one way or the other.
Let me ask you this. I think this is an important question, but do you think this is an issue? Do you think this is an issue for the game's sake or the fan's sake? Because there's a reason why I'm asking you this, because you think about what you said about the strike zone. All right, most of the players and most of the coaches can handle that stuff. Who's the ones who get irate about it? Who are the ones that the officials take the beatings from? It's typically the fans, it seems like, because I've seen coaches, and I'm more of a basketball guy like you and a football guy, and I think that the coaches get their fair share of shots in, but for the most part, especially in the lower levels, not non-professional, those officials take a beating from the crowd, from the parents, and from everybody else.
When you hear about why our association is so far down, that's where we are in basketball, it's just they blame it on the fans.
Right, they immediately blame it on the fans.
Immediately.
And so my question is that what's driving? Do we need to base our changes, our solutions on that?
I think in football, I think that's part of the reason that you continue to use it, because but it's because of the mechanics of officiating. Okay, when you're refereeing baseball and basketball, and I'm only using this because these are the main sports, right? And there are a litany of other sports that are being officiated, and we may leave one out, but
do they face this in swimming?
Yeah, I know, right? I don't know that they do. It's a time thing, but when you think of the mechanics of the one that irritates most people in football is the pass interference thing. It irritates me, and I know it irritates millions of people.
That and targeting for me.
Yeah, and targeting. You're looking at a ball coming in either from up or level, and you're looking at the receiver and the defensive. So there's all these different things that all come to one point, and so you can see how somebody can make a mistake more commonly in football than I'm going to make a mistake with a strike or a ball in baseball, or with a charge block in basketball, because I'm looking up around. So I can see that, and that's why I think that it should exist there. And that does keep fans from, but as a coach, as a former coach, not a very good one, but as a former coach, the one thing that I would want from an official that we would rarely get around here, and I'm not going to get started on 8 AAA officials. That if you've experienced District 8 AAA in Middle Tennessee, there's nothing I need to say. It speaks for itself. I'm not going to sit there and do that. What I would say is, all you want as a coach is when you miss it, just own it.
Yeah, own it.
And,
explanation.
And I think that, and I've played for college coaches, and I know you've been around guys that have played at all kind of levels, and that at every level of every sport, except for the NFL, you saying that you missed it doesn't calm the coach down, because, I mean, the NFL is just a different animal in of itself. But even in the NBA, and you know, if you just come by and say, God, coach, I don't know what I did. I have no clue.
Yeah.
I just completely missed it. And one of the guys that, if I would have been thinking we could have had as a guest, is the head coach at Franklin County High School, Mike Holt.
Oh, we gotta have him.
One of the finest basketball coaches you'll ever find in your life. And he actually was a baseball official for years. And one of the funniest stories he tells is he missed one at a guy sliding into second. He rung him up. And he's like, God, I missed it. As soon as I was doing that, I missed it. And I knew I missed it. And I turned around, and the coach came running out, and he said, what in the heck, you know, and he was just started hollering at him, and he looked at him, he said, I have no earthly idea why I called him out. And the coach just stopped on it and just was like, he didn't know what to say, and he turned around and walked off because he owned it. And I think that's more than half the battle with is you know, now the problem is, how does that resonate with the fans? The fans can never be in a conversation between a coach and an official.
No.
So they'll never know that official owned it. They're going to hate him, and they're going to think it's their fault. So your question's a good question, because I don't know. I do think part of it was because of the fans blaming officials and these kind of things. But, you know, I don't think that officials. I'm no big fan of officials. You know this.
I know that. I know that. And that's why this is one of the topics.
Sure, but I do think that most officials don't want to make a call that affects the outcome of the game.
What do you think is a solution for this? I thought, you know, my idea was, I'm a technology guy, and obviously you're not. We kind of that's one of the areas that we do differ on. And we're similar on a lot of areas, but technology ones that we're not. And I'm kind of the AI guy. I'm like, let's use some AI. Let's figure this out. And you're like, nah. So what's the solution for this?
I think, you know, and I'm not going to get into it, but my son just went into officiating locally, and when we went online and we paid the $75 or $85, he was an official.
That's it.
That's a problem.
That is a problem.
Okay, and so I do.
So he got the sticker.
Oh,
he got the patch.
He's on it, son. He's on it. Got the coat, the whole nine.
Yeah.
And but it's just that's senseless. You have to have some training. The main thing is you've got all these, you know, you get very strong personalities in officials, especially college officials and NBA officials.
Yeah.
And in high school officials now. But the problem is fans, anything that happens to an official for blowing something is never public domain. And it's part of the union contracts in the higher levels that all that is handled privately. You never see, it's rare that you ever see officials suspended for this or that. Yeah. It happens, but it's rare.
Yeah.
I do think that there needs to be more public scrutiny of officials.
You can't, because you're the people who scrutinize
they get
are
fined.
Right.
They get all these things, and you hear all these people say these things. Oh, I can't talk about it. You should be able to talk about it.
I agree.
If after the game the media can sit here and excoriate a head coach or a player, and say the worst things about him, that coach ought to be able, when they had the game stolen from them by an official who doesn't like them, who has a personal vendetta, which happens, and it happens in the professional leagues all the time and the college level, you should be able to say something about it. You should be able to openly say, and you should criticize them, and that should not be something that is, you know, to me the solution is stop trying to officiate sports the same way that everybody's trying to make snowflakes out of everybody in society, okay? Let sports be the last bastion. If I have to deal with the snowflake thing where I can't say anything mildly offensive, I can't even, you know what I mean, because of all these, you offend this or that or the other. Let sports be the place where, you know, Coach Mike can slip up and still say a bad word, because in the, you know, that's sort of a coaching thing to do. Not for everybody. I'm not, or you know, just let a guy in football absolutely annihilate a receiver, and just be, you know, you can tell the difference when you watch a guy who's going after somebody's head and who's not. And when a receiver is on a downward motion and he's level and he happens to hit the guy up because he's falling, I'm sorry.
It's not target. It shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be. And that thing, what you're happening is you're getting a situation where you're trying to politically correctly officiate sports.
Yeah.
And it's just, I always felt bad for Shaq when he played, because if they would have officiated the game levelly, and evenly when he was playing, he would have had 200,000 points, because he would have been at the line. Even a guy that made 1 out of 10, he'd have 50 shots a night.
Yeah, he got hammered.
He got murdered, and
Yeah,
they officiated him differently.
Yeah.
And so all those type things, and there's a lot of variables. You got unions and things.
And that's one thing I struggle with, watching basketball in particular, is that, and me and you, we played on all sides of the court, so we weren't just post players or just guard play, that type of stuff. But if you got a guy like Shaq, he can get just absolutely obliterated, and then you have two guards that are in the backcourt, and somebody taps them, and they call a touch foul. How can that even happen?
I don't know what
that drives me insane.
It drives everybody insane, because
it makes me not want to watch basketball.
It does, and Michael Jordan, the best player to ever even think about lacing him up, he did get beneficial treatment from the officials.
Yeah,
okay?
I agree.
I might be one of the few Jordan. I love it. That's the guy.
Yeah, he's the guy. I mean, he is. And I was a Drexler guy. And
he did get beneficial treatment from the officials. LeBron James. LeBron James, when he runs people over, and how many charges do you see in the NBA?
Yeah.
I mean, it just doesn't happen because they won't call it, and I don't know. It's I think you need more training, and I think that these people need more. I mean, the solution to me is, I think you have competent people.
Yeah.
But I just think that they need some more public scrutiny, and they need to investigate when the same guy causes the same team to, you know what I mean? Because there's personal issues that shouldn't be in play.
No, you're exactly right. When I was coaching, one thing that we did, we spent a lot of time in North Alabama. And that area is a Gulf Coast South or something like that, Conference Division II. And their officials, when we went to team camp, their officials were at team camp, and I always liked that, and because
absolutely.
And what
I know a guy
that
calls D2 down.
What I noticed about it is that when we had timeouts, their supervisor was grabbing them up and chewing their butts out and telling them what they did wrong. And so not only was it a teen camp for high schools in the area, it was a teen camp for the officials.
Yep.
But I never saw any high school officials. They were all college officials. And why would your son, who is a great basketball mind, and he's smart, and he can do what he could do that and make a good living on the side as doing something like that. Why is he not getting some type of education for that?
Yeah, they don't.
To me, I agree with, there needs to be some public scrutiny. There needs to be allowable scrutiny, and that doesn't happen. But to me, my end, being the educator, the training is the most important.
I totally agree. And I will say this too. Do you think that it's okay that in the NFL a guy shows up on Friday or Saturday to call a game of the best athletes in the world, some of them, and then on Sunday night he flies back and does his job as the CEO of Borden's Milk Company all week, or of U.S. Bank all week, and then flies back in on? I'm sorry, I don't think that doesn't cut it for me.
No,
and
absolutely.
I do think that's why NFL officials, to me, in my view, lag behind the NBA, who I think are the best. Even as bad as they screw it up, I still think they're the best officials in the world. And even the major, these full-time guys, that's what they're doing. And in the summer, they're honing their craft. They're going to camp, just like you're talking about.
Yeah.
But the NFL and college officials, this is not their full-time gig. And I take issue with that, because you know as well as I do that unless you're doing to hone your craft, you have to do it.
Yeah, there's no doubt. You have to practice the craft.
Sure. If you're going to be paid the way they're paid, come on now.
So, to me, I think this is at some point in time in the future, Milk and Cornbread need to solve more problems, whatever those may be.
Sure.
We talked about at some point in time I talked to Colin, the producer, that we need to have an actual driveway conversation.
Yeah.
Like we've had where we just pop the recorder on. We have some people in the driveway and we're having conversations, because I think that produces some quality conversation in that too. And also the other thing is that we've got some ideas of going elsewhere and doing some recordings. Oh, great! I can't wait! I can't wait to do those, where we go other places and do recordings and have conversations with people who are completely different.
And just trying to keep it fun, because
this is fun.
It is. It's fun for us, and I don't want anybody to just think that all we do is we get together and we howl about COVID-19 or about high taxes, because that's not it. I mean, we're more than that. You know what I mean? There's a lot more depth to us and to everything else that we do than that. So. I don't know. I think it keeps it a little light, man. That's why I think that the movie, and admittedly, I told you earlier I haven't watched it, but I just thought how cool of an idea that was, because I mean that's just a whole different.
And so one of the things we talked about in the future is not only going some off location places, which are going to be it'll be interesting, because we've talked about these.
Yeah.
They need to tune in for this, but to me, one of the ideas that Colin, the producer, had that I think would be great would be Milk and Cornbread play Trivial Pursuit. And it's silly, but it would be funny, because I think that Jeopardy or something along those lines would be fun. We thinking about down the road, if you have not followed on Twitter, it's MNC Podcast, at MNC Podcast is the Twitter. We do have a website. Like I said, it's simple, but it's there. It's www.milkandcornbreadforamerica.com. We're going to get a Facebook here pretty soon. You can listen to us on YouTube.
You have an email? Did you already say that?
milkandcornbreadforamerica@gmail.com.
Yeah, and what I don't think people really think we're serious, but I absolutely. I mean, it's great if somebody were to email us that agrees with us. That's fine.
Yeah.
But I really, really want
somebody to disagree.
Who just
I'd love it.
And not because we want to argue.
No, we wouldn't attack. It wouldn't be an attack.
Not at all.
No,
I just want. I want to because we're trying to come up with some solutions or something. Maybe we've got it completely wrong, and I'm not totally set in my ways to where because with the UBI is a good example, because you and I would have before you and I met, or before you and I started talking about it, because we've talked about it way after we met, but I would have never discussed it with you.
No.
But some of the talks that we've had about it and stuff, I mean, I'm not.
So you're saying Tulsi can email you at
Mick and you got Tulsi.
Milk and Cornbread for America at gmail.com.
Two of the finest Americans I know, and they're she's a little better looking than you are, but
that's true.
But I mean, it's when you look at different factors. Well, I'm not going back down, but so we're open minded.
Yeah. I would love that too. I wish people would reach out, not be afraid. Like I told you before, we've had people that said, I didn't know what it was about.
Yeah.
But I think that sets us apart, because it's kind of the Milk and Cornbread people are like,
who knows?
What the heck is that?
Yeah, and who knows what what the next week holds?
I know, you just never know. I mean, we have some great conversations.
Sure.
Like I said, milkandcornbreadforamerica.com, milkandcornbreadforamerica@gmail.com, MNC Podcast at MNC Podcast for Twitter.
Did you memorize all that?
I just got it in my head, because I'm dealing with it on the the other thing I wanted to say, I have a problem that I want you to come up with a solution for me.
Boy.
For the next time we don't have to talk about it yet, but the next time we're going to lead off of this. I want you to come up with a solution for all those dang Kroger plastic bags. Not necessarily Kroger, but the plastic grocery bags. What can I do with those stupid things? And I want you to think on that, because you're one of the wisest people I know.
Oh, please.
And I know that you'll come up with a solution for me. So for our next
to meet new people.
For our next conversation, we're going to lead off with your solution to the grocery plastic bags.
Wow.
Think about it.
All right.
Think about it. So,
yeah.
But before we do go, you have a saying that you like to say, and I will jack it up all along. But how do you want to end this?
You can always take comfort at the end of every day when you just remember the oxen are slow, but the earth is patient.
That concludes episode 4 of the Milk and Cornbread podcast. We want to thank everybody for listening as always. And if you have any ideas or want to be a guest, please tweet us at MNC Podcast on Twitter or email us at milkandcornbreadforamerica@gmail.com. Stay tuned for future episodes as we have some awesome things planned. Once again, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.